Hello and welcome to another episode of Box Trick. I'm your host, Matt Brady. Joining me, as always, is Thomas the Motas Davis and Alan Thomas. And today, we are going to be doing a quick little overview of a few hidden gems on the original Xbox. What many people like to call the actual Xbox One, even though now that there's the X-Bone, or whatever people call it these days. So I guess we'll call it the OG. The OG Xbox.
The OG Xbox.
So we've got about 5 games we're going to look at. And Thomas, I'll toss it over to you first for one of your games.
Sure. So I guess the first game I'm going to go ahead and talk about is actually a fairly early game on the Xbox. This would be Breakdown. Breakdown was definitely a hidden gem. It was an entirely first-person game. Everything in it was first-person. The platforming was first-person, the fighting was first-person, and then that's the great thing. It was actually a first-person shooter and fighter.
Yeah.
Even the vomiting was in first-person in this game. But it was this really sort of weird kind of post-humanity story.
Yeah.
So essentially, it takes place all in this strange kind of Japanese, I guess, Area 51 bio-research lab thing, where you wake up amnesia, you start developing these powers as, I don't remember the story definition for it, but plot device happens and you start earning really cool powers, like the ability to punch really, really hard, throw like Hadouken fireballs, the ability to jump kick people in the face, and entirely first person. It got a little bit disorienting doing this, but it was still really, really cool. And everything was more interaction based too, so you couldn't run over ammo and health packs to pick them up. You'd actually have to look down and grab them.
Yeah. There
was a button specifically for reaching out your arm and swiping them off the floor, and you really did just swipe them.
Yeah. And I would say, just if you go look up gameplay footage of this might be the best looking game on the original Xbox. It's for the original Xbox, it's the graphics are pretty outstanding.
Oh yeah, and it's it's not without its flaws. There were a lot of bugs, a lot of AI issues, but it was it was interesting just to see that sort of experiment with first person.
Yeah,
because there wasn't a lot of games that did pure first person in that sort of way.
Yeah, it's kind of like I would say, it's not necessarily a precursor to Mirror's Edge, but when you think of Mirror's Edge to give it a reference point and how it's it's first person done differently, it's kind of similar in that manner.
Yeah, in that they tried as much as possible to keep the player in the game rather than remove it for cutscenes and things like that.
Yeah. All right, Alan, we will move over to you for one of your games.
So for the Xbox, I chose Sudeki. Sudeki eventually got released on computer as well. It came out on Xbox first. It was sort of a Fable style game, like an action RPG. You go through several different characters. I think there's 4 total that you end up recruiting, and each has a slightly different combat style. And you can just switch between which one you want to play as, and while you're not playing as them, they don't generally do much, so you can kind of have this whatever style fits best with you. So it gives pretty much every player something that they can enjoy. So it did really well in that fashion. As far as graphics, it was decent for Xbox era. The voice acting was pretty awful.
Yeah.
So you gotta sit through a good amount of subtitles that are terrible. There's a good amount of fetching, you go find special items to get your most powerful weapons.
Yeah.
And it's a decent story for what the Xbox had.
Right.
This is definitely a game that not a lot of people saw that was fun, and it kind of got overshadowed heavily by Fable, as it was a similar type game.
Yeah, really, there's not that many RPGs on the Xbox. There's there's both Knights of the Old Republic games, and then Jade Empire, and other than that, I can't think of any actual turn-based JRPGs or anything like that that's really on the Xbox. I think it's almost all action adventure. So
Yeah, there was one or two D&D games,
that's right.
and that was
There was
Even then,
Fable,
those
and
were
that was
like
it.
hack and slashes, weren't they?
Yeah, and there was
More than anything.
there's a few like gauntlet games, but again, I mean that's kind of more like action
Yeah,
based.
those are more like oh, they were gauntlet games. They weren't.
Right. Yeah, but I'm looking at screenshots of it now. The graphics actually look pretty good for original Xbox.
Yeah, they were decent, and there was different. I mean, the sorceress that you get, she kind of shoots from a first-person mode, whereas the fighter fights in third person. So you go through different, combat styles depending on which character you care to play as.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a fun game.
Oh, it was made by the company that the developer that made it, Climax Studio, was later turned into BlackRock Studio, and they are the same people that made all of the like MotoGP games and Split Second, which is one of my favorite racing games on the Xbox.
A very good racing game.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, moving on to one of my games. One of my games that I'm going to talk about first is. It's not necessarily a hidden gem on the Xbox. It was kind of like a flagship title, but it kind of just got I think it originally was supposed to be its main title, and that's Crimson Skies. I think that was kind of the Xbox's like original plan to be it's like one of its main franchises, and then of course Halo came out and kind of tossed that game to the wayside. But Crimson Skies is set in a kind of like one of those rebranded World War II, like post-World War II ideas, kind of similar to if you've ever played like Red Alert, where it's like a different timeline. It's not necessarily steampunk, but I mean that's kind of like a good reference point for an idea. But it plays similar to, I would say, in a way, Ace Combat, but more specifically, I'm trying to think of a very similar game. I guess kind of Ace Combat, but much slower. And the game's about 6 to 7 levels long, but each level is like a new little open world, and you fly around and you collect ships. And the game has like really, really good voice acting, and it's also just a lot of fun. It's not very difficult, but it's just like it's really action oriented, and the story is just good enough to like really want you to keep playing the game. And there is a prequel to this game, which is just PC only. But sadly, there has never been another entry into the series. But it is definitely a fun game, and it looks really good. Another well-looking game for the original Xbox. And a little trivia note, which is something always funny. If you look up the game, and you look at the main character, his name is... oh man, now it's crap. Now I'm forgetting his name. But it is like Nathan something. I can't remember. But if you look at him, he looks just like Nathan Drake from Uncharted. And this game came out like years before. It's kind of interesting and kind of funny if you go look at the main character.
He really is that sort of kind of renegade hero.
Yeah, I mean he looks
he looks
both
Nathan Drake
like
and him they look exactly like that archetype.
Yeah.
So but you're right, it is pretty interesting to see it just like, oh, he looks a lot like that other hero.
Yeah, Nathan Zachary is his name. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah,
and he looks just like Nathan Drake. It's so funny. But yeah, but one of the really cool things is this is one of those games for the original Xbox that had like the system link, the like 16 like player system link, as well as online multiplayer. And the online multiplayer is so it's not fun anymore, but it was a lot of fun when it existed, just because it's like it's kind of like the 3D Star Fox. I think like when you're playing Star Fox 64 and you get into that 3D mode where you can fly around a little bit, but it's kind of limited. But it is definitely a great game, and I'm sure you can find it for like $2 now. So definitely worth checking out. All right, well, I think Thomas has one more game for us.
I do, and this is actually a pretty famous hidden gem. This is a game that criminally never got the widespread, well, not acclaim, but I would say deployment that it honestly deserved. This is Oddworld: Stranger's Wrath. This was a first-person shooter made into the Oddworld universe, so yeah. Abe's Exodus, Abe's Odyssey, Munch, all those games are also part of this world. It's really kind of like it's an interesting take on the Western genre of games. And there have been a few already on the Xbox: Gun, Call of Juarez, and now Oddworld: Stranger's Wrath, which kind of came out of left field and unfortunately didn't really have the marketing that it honestly should have. And I think a couple other games came out at the same time as it that kind of overshadowed it.
Yeah, it came out in 2005, and that was almost right when the Xbox 360 was like getting.
Yeah, that was pretty much the end of the Xbox development cycle.
Yeah.
But it was really cool because you had like a crossbow that could fire 2 different ammo types at once. You had the ability to stun or kill enemies, and if you stun them, you could capture them to earn more money. There was stealth mechanics that actually worked fairly well. Couple melee upgradable melees, and a really interesting story.
Yeah.
That took you from bounty hunt, like it was essentially the quintessential like a old west cowboy bounty hunter story, where like the bounty hunter is going through capturing people, and then you find out the bounty hunter has a good reason for doing this, has a reason for doing this, and then kind of has his change of heart, that sort of thing. It's a really good game. It's really well written, and it's a shame that it just never got the attention it deserved. However, there have been re-releases, notably on the PC, the PS3, and I believe there's even been an Android and iOS port. Yeah. So, not all is lost.
Nice.
I feel crazy because I think I'm like the only person who never really liked the Oddworld.
I've unfortunately never played them. I
was gonna say Oddworld has been really hit and miss for a lot of people, so you're not alone in that.
Yeah.
I mean, I really enjoyed the series, but I've been playing it since PC, and I got hooked on it pretty early.
There was a game for the PS1. I remember that.
I think they came out both on PC and PS1.
They did.
Yeah, and it was like a 2D platformer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where it was kind of like a sort of a slower paced Lemmings.
Okay.
That also punished you for fucking up pretty harshly.
Okay. Yeah.
But I don't know. I really enjoyed them, but yeah, they were definitely that kind of game where you either love it or you don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely worth checking out, especially for collectors of the original Xbox. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, moving on. I have one final game for this little overview, and that is a game that also came out on GameCube at the same time, although the Xbox version is the definitive version, apparently. And that is Batman Begins. I know that instantly people are going to think, wow, that sounds terrible. But, you know, as often movie games are pretty terrible. But Batman Begins, for the original Xbox, the best way to describe it is like, it's almost like the Arkham series. Like, it plays pretty similar. And when you think about Batman games in general, especially games that were coming out during that console generation, I mean, there was like all of these like animated series ones, which were pretty terrible. The game plays a lot like, it's a lot slower than Arkham. So it's almost kind of like Splinter Cell in a way. Like that, I think that's kind of a good game to reference it to. It's pretty easy. It's not a very difficult game at all. But it kind of uses, if you've played the Lord of the Rings games that came out during that generation, like the Two Towers and stuff like that, they were on like GameCube, PC, or PlayStation. It's one of those games where it uses like the actual cutscenes from the movie and then like switches into the gameplay. And the game actually came out like the day before the movie, so a lot of people like bought it so they could like see some of the movie. But it's not a really long game, but it has like some replayability because you unlock stuff when you beat the game. You unlock like costumes and stuff, and it also adds in missions that obviously didn't take place during the movie. Like you do a lot of his training. If you haven't seen the movie, here there might be some spoilers. But so you do like some of Bruce Wayne's training when he was training with like the League of Shadows with like Liam Neeson and stuff. And I think some of the actual voice actors. Like Christian Bale actually did his voice acting, Michael Caine, Liam Neeson. So a lot of the people that were in the movie actually voiced their characters in the game, which is kind of cool. That's always a nice little touch. But there actually is a lot of really cool driving missions. Like you get to drive in like the Tumbler or Batmobile, kind of similar to the Batman on the Sega CD, where it's that like third person driving where you're just behind it and you get to like launch missiles and stuff. But the whole game is definitely a lot of fun, and you can buy it for literally like $1. Like I've seen it. The sticker on my game is 99 cents that I bought at a used game store, and it was definitely worth the 99 cents. So
Now the game is an open world, is it?
no, it's not open world, but
Okay.
it's kind of like you're in different areas, and all of the areas are open. Like there's one where you go to Arkham and you can you can run around in the whole level. So it's not like really like corridor where it's like, okay, go through this corridor, beat these guys up, go through this next corridor. So there is like some open, level aspects to it. And you do get to do things differently. It's kind of like you can go in and just beat people up, or you can use stealth, or you can use fear, or whatever you want to do. It gives you that option of how you want to go through the level, and it's kind of fun. It's definitely worth checking out because there's not really, there actually just aren't really that many games for the original Xbox in general. So collecting for it is kind of difficult because almost all of those games came out on the PS2 or GameCube as well. So
Yep.
yeah. Well, all right. Well, hey, there are some original Xbox hidden gems. Hopefully that'll help, especially the collectors out there. And as always, thanks for listening.
See ya.